Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for inviting me here. I think it's now official that gold plating is a ghost. Because in the Netherlands, the same project was conducted in trying to ghost bust this gold plating phenomenon, and the outcome was exactly the same as in the UK. I think we had 150 complaints, and boiling down to 3, maybe 2 instances where one could, in all fairness, say that there was gold plating in play. So gold plating is a ghost, but a very costly one to chase, because this project alone cost around 140,000 euros to chase this ghost. Thank you very much. I wanted to tell you something about, I did 3 research projects commissioned by the Dutch government in 2000, 2005, and of recent in 2007 on problems concerning transposition of EC directives. The 2005 project was on comparing 6 member states of the EU as regards the way they transpose directives, the tools they use, the instruments, the procedures. Can we learn from one another? Conclusion there was that there's a sort of common culture as concerned implementation. There are no golden standards, there are no tips and tricks to dramatically speed up the transposition process as far as we could oversee. And the latest one is on the implementation in the Netherlands of sanction systems. But before I tell you something about that, that's my background. We interviewed a lot of people. If we look at the better regulation strategy that is in focus today, and we have discussed during the last 1.5 days, then one can see there's a strong focus on ex-ante efforts. So we have the impact assessment, consultation, maybe even simplification with its rolling programs. It's not really ex-ante, but it's very internal to the Commission. But if we look further, then we have an ex-post strategy in the Better Regulation Plan from 2005 too. And what did that contain? There was an idea that we should really look into the way EC law works in the member states. How is EC law in action to be assessed, and what can we learn from that? And that's where my remarks will focus on. If we look at the better regulation strategy, a lot of effort, a lot of focus on ex-ante efforts, and less effort in ex-post strategy. I will touch the communication later on. If we look at it, then we have, that was before the better regulation strategy kicked in already there, Solve It, a report of complaints on implementation. Then we had the interinstitutional agreement of 2003 with some instruments and provisions calling for the institutions to stricter apply time limits of transposition, annual reports on transposition, and a more strict monitoring of transposition, coming up with correlation tables, Commission reporting. Mr. Goodley touched upon that. And then we had the communication that was discussed right now on applying community law with its 4 tenets. I run by that very quickly because we just discussed it. And the one thing I wanted to ask attention for is there an adequate sense of urgency for ex-post evaluation? There's a lot of stress and a lot of budget put into ex-ante evaluation, but are we really looking very seriously to what is happening in practice, how EC legislation works when it's in action? Do we have an idea of the compliance rate? Every one of you here, being a member of a member state, once a year or once every 4 months, your Minister of Justice or any other minister will have a report or a debate in Parliament on crime rates or non-compliance rates. And what struck me was that we have discussions in the European Union on deficits in implementation, but compliance rates we know very little about, and that is what we touched upon in one of these projects. First of all, this was the end of the communication, improvement of internal working methods, inspire and stress responsibility of the member states was all touched upon, and ex post evaluation was in the better regulation strategy also, and I asked for is there an adequate sense of urgency for ex post evaluation? If we want to answer this question, then first we have to ask ourselves, how bad is it? Maybe we have the single market, but is it doing what we want it to do? So the cost of poor implementation and poor application, which drives non-compliance, is potentially very high. First of all, it's like Claudia Rada-Eli said, it's the Achilles heel of integration, compliance. We do not know a lot about it. And non-compliance endangers the very object of EU legislation, because we have it there to promote the economic and social progress in our single market. That's the first pillar object. That's why we have regulation in the first instance. And it's not the market, not itself, is the end, but promotion, economic and social progress. That's the end we try to, the goal we try to attain. So how bad is it? Poor implementation and application is a driver for non-compliance. And the effects of poor implementation are really very serious. First of all, they can result in market distortion, free rider behavior, unfair competition, forum shopping, etc. And lead to structural implementation deficits. The figure of 67% just now was put on the table as the last bit, and it can promote a really bad culture of a laggard culture of transposition and implementation. When we spoke in 2005 with the Department of Trade and Industry in the UK, this startled us somewhat, they shocked us. They said Britain is doing too well in transposing EC directive. We're going to slow down the pace. We're not going to try anymore to beat the time limits. We're just going to do it on our own pace because the other member states are doing so, and that's hurting British industry if we're the do-goody in the class. And that's a bad thing in itself. What you see in yellow is the report. We wrote it in. We asked him, can we make this comment? Because you're talking confidential. Yeah, write it down, the official said. It's no problem. This is our official policy. The ineffectiveness of policies, and I can go on how bad it is. So the single biggest threat to our minds is to implementation and application is not the process in itself, but the lack of information of the law in action. Ex post evaluation, we do not have enough information on the law in action, and then you cannot properly use it. First of all, and that's, I'm going to make 3 points and then we'll conclude. First of all, we lack the right information on the law in action. In all fairness, in Europe, we have a paper implementation culture. We make reports in member states on how we implemented it. And we are very much motivated to, not to embellish, but to strategically leave out things that are not working, saying that we have implemented it in the correct way, otherwise there will be an infringement procedure. This paper implementation culture, and that's in, from the project we did in 2000, results in, and that's the title of my introduction, in silent losses. And what are silent losses? To give you one example, just these were 4 run-of-the-mill dossiers we did in the Netherlands. A silent loss is the following. For instance, there was a good repute requirement in Directive 96/26 for road haulers, operators and road passengers, saying that if you committed a serious offence, you could not get your license renewed. Nobody had thought through at the time that for a road passenger operator who employed, say, 50 drivers, this is prohibitive for his business, because if one driver or 2 drivers offence, then he could, the man in charge could lose his license. So what did everybody do? You could not report back to the ministry in the Netherlands because this was a sort of a self-incrimination. So they just did away with it. And we found about 12 instances of things like that. So inspectors or authorities cannot cope with the EC legislation. They cannot report back. They're between a rock and a hard place, and they don't do anything. The second point is that views and opinions and impressions, rather than facts, underpin policy evaluations. Stakeholders are asked to their opinion, and we are strong on opinion, but sometimes lacking on fact. And this is no way the fault of the Commission. The Commission has very limited funds to do real systematic evaluation, but something needs to be done. The second point is we have a culture of a policy-oriented culture of making policies and remedying when something goes wrong in one policy area, remedying it with a new policy, not really re-evaluating. So there's little attention in this culture for the law in action, and when it is, when we really evaluate pieces of legislation, outcomes, not a very pretty picture. The public procurement directives were evaluated, ex post evaluated, and it was startling that 1/3 of all the public procurements in the EU did not, only 1/3 did comply, 2/3 did not comply. That's when you stick the thermometer in, things like that emerge, and that's a big wake-up call, I think. So we need ears and eyes in the member states from the Commission. So I really much like the I strategy of the Commission. That's the information strategy, and one was already called the pilot project. We have networks, we have agencies. That's a very sensible and clever strategy of the Commission to use to really feel how the law in action in the European Union is taking foot. The last one is we lack an effective feedback culture. We saw that, and I'm going to finish off with that, and then in silence I will give you some food for thought, 4 points maybe to improve upon, but lack of effective feedback culture is what we found in the preserved woods in the Basel regulation of '93. It's an historic example, but then we interviewed an inspector in Rijswijk in the Netherlands, and he said, listen, this is a typical example. We have this preserved woods provision in the Basel regulation, which makes a distinction between preserved wood, like hardened wood, like tropical wood, has these characteristics, should be treated like chemical waste and should not and should be recycled. That's one of the provisions there, and but somebody along the road had thought up that this would not really fair for wood produced outside of the EU, so that was exempted. So wood, preserved wood produced within the European Union should be treated like chemical waste and, if possible, be recycled. Outside the EU was exempted, and then he pointed his finger. He said, listen, do you see that site there? They're tearing down a building. In that building are preserved woods. Walk along with me on the road. Let's stop a truck and in the debris find the wood produced within the European Union and that was produced outside the European Union. Mind you, it has been there for 45 years by approximation. So on that note, I would like to leave it here.
Thank you very much, Professor. And yes.